Welcome to the Art Talk Live. We love doing these online, and it's so exciting to be able to connect with you all here in, we're in Quincy, but you all are everywhere else. So I am going to be talking to you guys about Renee Lewis's work. But first, I do want to just say a little thank you to our sponsors. We have a lot of really wonderful sponsors who have helped support this collection of exhibitions celebrating women artists. The exhibitions are going to be on display through December 18th. So if you get a chance, we will have this still on display for a little bit longer. Renee's work is this amazing mixed media work that we're so excited to have on here and talk a little bit more about. You can see it on display here. And Renee is a native of Brooklyn, New York, actually, but always really loved the combination of texture and color, which you can see in her work. And she says that the cultures in New York really inspired her and really were an influential part of her life. And she actually received a BFA in fabric design from the School of Art at Syracuse, and then also studied art history in Amsterdam and the Netherlands. So her focus on fabric design is really unique in this in her work, and you can really see it. So I'm excited to talk about it. It's also an award-winning artist and is represented by several galleries in Florida and resides in Winter Park. So welcome, Renee. We're excited to have you here.
Thank you.
Can you tell me, when did you first become interested in art?
You know, as long as I can remember, I loved coloring, you know, having coloring books or paper. And I remember that when we did art in school, you know, starting in kindergarten, that was my favorite part. So it really began early on.
That's awesome. It's so important. You know, I mean, one of the great work that Sarah does with all of our children in this area, in this region, and, you know, getting to be able to have them be inspired early on is really wonderful. So, yeah, so you went to school, you studied art in school, you studied fabric design, and then kind of what happened?
Well, I met a guy in college, and when I graduated, instead of going back to New York and to Manhattan and work in the fabric design industry, I got married. And to make a long story short, he was from New England. We lived in Maine and New Hampshire, had 2 children. And when they were, my son and daughter, when they were 5 and 6, we got divorced. And I just felt that I needed to make a new start. And so with them in tow, I relocated to Winter Park. And so for many years, I was a single parent, and I wore every hat imaginable. And, you know, from mom, dad, coach, chef, driver, right, friend, you know, no matter what it was. And I worked, of course, and I was very focused on putting them first. I felt that was important. And so there was just no time to be creative. You know, when you're an artist, whether it's a musician or a writer, you know, or fine art, you can't just turn it on. You know, oh, I have 15 minutes. I think I'll, you know, go and create. And so, you know, all the years that they were growing up, I was not able to do any artwork. And it really was a bit of a stabbing pain, if you will. I felt that I should be doing it, and I knew that I was missing out on something. And but again, you know, I was determined that they would go to college, and you know, it took a lot to make that happen. And so I had a big gap. I mean, there were times that I was able to produce a piece of work, or I tried to take art classes where I could, took a workshop, but I was not, certainly not doing it on a professional level.
Mhm.
Hmm.
I'm curious, did you still conceive of yourself as an artist? Would you call yourself an artist when you were introducing yourself to people during that time?
I didn't, and that's an interesting question, because I used to struggle with that myself, because I felt that I didn't have the work show for that, even though being an artist was really who I was inside, but I didn't feel comfortable saying that, and then saying, oh yes, but my day job is, and I was working in the tourism industry, being here in the Orlando area.
Mhm.
So that's a very good question, Sarah, but it wasn't until about 6 years ago, when I really was able to do this full time, that I felt comfortable saying I'm a professional artist.
Mhm.
So, well, that leads me to my next question. So when you finally returned to art making, what brought you back?
Well, I was finally finished with the corporate world, and the children were now grown, out of the house, out of the checkbook, if you will. And they both had good jobs, both had their college degrees. And I was one day I said, if I don't do this now, when will I do this? So I took what was my son's room and turned it into my studio. And the day that I had the drawing table set up and had good lighting and so on, I just started drawing, and it just came pouring out of me. It had been so bottled up for so long. So some of the pieces, the first slide that you just had on the screen, that was one of the first series that I did from my closet. I was looking for inspiration. And these are all bags that I have. And so I brought them into the studio, kind of hung them up, made an arrangement. And so this became Bag Lady. So this was, again, from the closet series, as I like to call it. And you can see that I do like to, you see the repetitive patterns, the decorative motifs. So that's a constant theme. This slide I always liked Picasso. I'm very influenced by the Post-Impressionists, and I kind of include Picasso in that. So I had done 2 pieces as my way to an homage to Pablo. So this is one of the 2, and it was fun to do.
Mhm. I noticed, going back to what you just said a moment ago about the pattern and the texture. So Angie mentioned that you studied fabric design, and I feel like
Yes.
that's really evident still in your work. Is the fabric design still a big influence for you?
It is because I'm always thinking, in this piece, I don't necessarily repeat the same pattern, but I'm interested in having different patterns within that one drawing. So yes, and I loved fabric design. It was such an interesting thing to study, because I also took weaving. I still actually have my own loom, but it's so big, it almost takes up a room by itself. So I haven't woven in a while, but I used to silk screen as well. And at the last drawing with fruit. This was kind of fun. I was motivated by this beautiful orange pepper that I saw in Publix. And I just looked at it. I said, this is the color, the shape. I bought it, I brought it home, and it became this drawing. So you never know where inspiration will come from.
Yeah. Yeah. And you mentioned Pablo Picasso. Who are your other major art influences? Are there fabric designers that you really look at, or
well,
like, in your
yes,
art family?
one fabric designer that maybe some of you have heard of, he was very well known, was Jack Lenore Larson. And his work, he was very popular in the late 60s through 70s, the 80s. He actually passed away not that long ago. He was well into his 90s. And his work really, I think, changed fabric design. You could Google him and look at his work. It's Larson, I believe. Beautiful, beautiful work. But other artists, I love Matisse, I love Lautrec, and two other Post-Impressionists who were not as well known, but also did beautiful work, which were Bonnard and Voulard. Just wonderful patterns and colors. This piece is called The Delicate Ones, and it's one of my favorites. This one I just started drawing. I just, let my pencil take me wherever it wanted to go. And then I had fun. I don't think I mentioned this yet, but I draw on black mat board. So that makes my work a bit unique from the get-go, just drawing on black. And I use colored pencil, oil crayons, and pastels. The pastels are the very last layer, the top layer. And so in this piece, I left the leaves black and just kind of scratched in there and used a white pencil to get that texture.
Mm-hmm.
And you'll always see kind of curly, kind of wild hair, and guess where the curls come from. So
yeah, and a lot of women too, a lot of female figures.
Yes. And I think my enjoyment of drawing women started in my freshman year at Syracuse, when we had to take figure drawing. And we had this wonderful model, and there, of course, it would be so unpolitically correct now, but she was a little chubby, and so all the students called her Fat Alice. I know, but she was a sweet woman. I know that would never happen now. But she was so interesting to draw. And I think that's where that started, was drawing women. But more than that, I really like to celebrate women. I had wonderful grandmothers and aunts and great aunts, and I personally believe that women sustain the universe. And so I like to celebrate women. This was an award-winning piece, and it just, I think, has a great spirit. I just had fun. You can see, again, the different designs on the dresses that they're wearing. And, the really intense color, again, is that final layer of the pastels.
Mm-hmm.
So, talking about women, so can you talk about how you relate color and vibrancy to describe the nature of women? Because your work is very vibrant and bright, and you're depicting the nature of women. So can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I as you'll see, like particularly in this work, I don't, I make their hair whatever color I think is going to look good in that part of the drawing. You know, I'm not trying to do a realistic interpretation or representation of a woman who just has brunette or black hair or blonde hair. So I try to bring out, I think, all the beautiful things that I think women are made up of, and what what we all carry around with us. And so I try to do that in what they're wearing. You know, again, here's an example of you know, their hair and the clothes. This is a brand new piece that you're looking at that I'm actually entering in a show here, one of the art groups I belong to in Daytona Beach. So this is going into a show in about another week or so. But I like to have them kind of relating to each other, but yet they're all very individual.
Well, could you also talk about how a lot of your figures have these kind of fractured faces? And so what
Yes.
is the relevance of the kind of split face?
You know, I started to do that sort of unconsciously, but as I noticed it myself, I saw this in all of my work. I think that we all have many sides to ourselves, many facets of our personality that, you know, we have one face that we wear to work and one face that we have for our children, and, you know, one for, you know, the world in general. And I think that that's what that represents.
Mm-hmm.
At least to me, you know, it's my way of showing that. This is my series of fairy godmothers. If you can go to my website sometime, you'll see I've done, I think this is Fairy Godmothers 4. And I did this as a triptych. So it's these three together. And this was fun to do as well. And again, you see the stripes and the floral patterns and the hair. And I love color, obviously. You can see that. You know, my studio and creating work is my happy place now. And I've had a lot of people, when they've seen my work at a show, they'll come up to me and say, you know, you must be a really happy person. You know, and you know, I said, well, I guess I am. Basically, I have my moments like everyone else, but I'm glad that that's what comes through in my work.
I love that. I love that your studio is your happy place. So as we start looking towards opening it up to Q&A, and if anybody wants to put their questions in the chat, feel free. As someone who has worn many hats and explored those many sides of your own life, what advice do you have for artists, or maybe especially those who don't want to call themselves an artist right now because they don't have an active studio practice?
I would say hold on to the desire. If that is something that you hope to eventually do, that you can't do right now for whatever reason, and they're usually pretty valid reasons, just hold on to that desire, because a moment will come, and you have to recognize it. You know, it's not always a door that's opening. It might be a window. You know, it might be up the chimney or something. But when that moment comes and you can jump in, you can really jump in full force. It's going to feel wonderful. it's going to feel wonderful. And, you know, one of the thing I'd like to share, because this is significant in my journey. My dad was a musician. And when he was 5 years old, you know, they got a piano and my grandmother gave him piano lessons. And he loved it so much that she used to have to say to him, okay, that's enough practicing, go out and play now. And so as he grew up, he also played the saxophone and the clarinet. And my grandparents were immigrants. They had come over, you know, around 1917 or so from Eastern Europe. And so my grandmother thought that being a full-time musician, you would be a bum. And so he, you know, he went a different route. He, of course, fought in World War II, came back, went to college, became a CPA. And all of his life, and he lived till 93, all of his life, he used to say to me and my sister, why did I give up the music? Why did, I mean, almost till his last day. And I began to see, even in my 30s, when I got divorced and, you know, had all that responsibility of being a single mom, I said, oh my God, I'm doing the same thing. I'm going through the same thing Dad did. You know, I'm letting the art go. It kept going on a back burner and a back, you know, further back. And so I think part of my deep like passion that just came pouring out of me, I wanted to honor him for what he did not do with his music. I really felt I have to now be true to myself and be an artist. So, you know, if you have that feeling, don't let it go. You know, hold on to it, create a little box somewhere inside and just wait for the right moment.
Well,
I love that. Thank you.
Don't you have a picture of your family that you could share with
Yes.
us?
So let me show you. So when I talked about when I first got the studio set up, even before I did the closet series, I thought, okay, where am I going to start? And I have all these old family photos that belong to my parents. And so I started to go through the box and I found this. I know it's a reflection, but can you see that?
Yeah.
Okay. So this is from about 1940 in Brooklyn. This is my dad's side of the family. So from that little picture, I'm going to stand up and hold this up. So this is the drawing, one of the first pieces I did. I don't know if you can see all of it, but you can get a general idea. So that was a series that I did. I pulled out several photos, and it was just wonderful fun. And that drawing actually won an award.
Oh, wow.
Yes.
And I think it's so interesting. Even there, you couldn't resist adding pattern. There's still pattern.
Yes. And then you can see I was drawing on white there. I was using white paper. The black was kind of an accident. One day I ran out of paper and I had black mat board. And I said, well, you know, why not draw on that? And it was like, oh my gosh, something happened with the colors. And so I haven't stopped. But I did look through I have envelopes of my student work, and I did find this. This was one of my fabric designs, kind of a big piece.
Beautiful.
And you can see the love of color. And this was my homage to Rousseau, Henri Rousseau. So it's kind of a jungle theme, but that was the kind of thing that we had to do in fabric design. And you would create, and if you wanted to silk screen this, you could create a silk screen and print it on fabric. So very time consuming. You know, if you ever see hand printed fabric and you wonder why it's so expensive, many hours.
Oh yeah, it's for a good
Many
reason.
hours.
We have a couple of questions in the chat.
Okay, great.
Mary Gallagher asked, do you create your art using models or are they from your imagination? Are some of the women in your art people you know or have known?
Great questions. I do not use models. It's mostly from my imagination. And sometimes it's from just looking, well, for example, I have several sketchbooks, and I always take one with me if I have a doctor's appointment or a dental appointment or something, or I'm getting its tires rotated on the car, and I will sketch people, usually women, you know, who are sitting there, they're, you know, they don't know I'm sketching them, and they often end up in my work. So, you know, sometimes you just see someone that's like, wow, it was a great pose or great hair, you know. And what was the second part of your question? I'm sorry.
Well, they were asking if you know them or have known them.
Oh, yes. I mean, I have drawn some of the people in the family, excuse me, especially when I was doing the family series.
Mhm.
But I think more so it's how I felt about a grandmother or an aunt or my mom or my sister, that it may not necessarily look like them, but it's them. They're in there, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Beth Appleton said, you have a lovely sense of color and I love your bold, unique designs. Your work seems very kinetic. They all seem to move around and vibrate. What are you working on right now?
Oh, I can show you. This is kind of a fun piece. This is going to be called the prom dress.
Wow.
So it's,
Love it.
I was kind of remembering, but I was also looking at pictures of, but I had some dresses that look like that. Prom dresses from, some were from the 1950s. That was before I went to proms. Most of them were from the 1960s, maybe early 70s. So that's a little different because there aren't women per se in the dresses. It's the mannequin, but it's the dress that has the personality.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yeah, so that'll be a fun piece, I think.
You know, you have such a unique style and signature, and it's so neat to see your earlier work and how it hasn't changed. Like you just, you know, not a lot of artists have that same, you know, unique message and, you know, color story and just hand. You can just, you know, you can tell it's your work, and that's just so fascinating and interesting. I love that.
Thank you. It's funny that when I look back on this now, I still enjoy looking at it, but I know how much I've grown as an artist. So I see kind of an immaturity, if you will, like looking at that. But I was a lot younger, you know. I was a college girl, college student. But yeah, you know, I still have always loved color. I think color, just, you can say so much. It's so much expression in that. And this is just interesting. I just did, I do some outdoor shows, and I just did a show in DeLand, which is a little, you know, if you know where it is, kind of a little bit directly north of Orlando, about 30 miles. And they have a very nice outdoor show. And I had people coming into the booth and saying, wow, there is no other work in this show like yours.
Oh, that's so nice.
And it is, because sometimes, in Florida, we see a lot of beach scenes and Florida foliage and bright sunsets, and I don't do any of that. So I thought that was a good thing.
Mary Gallagher asked another question. She said, do you have a favorite color? And if so, why do you use it?
I tend to lean towards warm colors. I love like magenta. I love that color, lilac, lavender color, reds. I don't know. It just seems, my personality seems to, I'm always drawn to those colors. So when I do pieces, like the one you showed, the women, it's mostly blue. I have to consciously make myself, go in that direction. Say, okay, I'm going to use I'm going to use cool colors now. And so.
Which one was it? This one?
Yeah, this one, right. I had to really, you can see, even with the hair, I I couldn't just leave the hair in blues and greens. I had to have, the magenta and the red in there. And lately, I don't know where this is coming from, but these spheres, like a sun or a moon, keep showing up in my work. And, sometimes I put them in because I think that spot needs something, and it needs to create an interesting negative space. Negative space is as important as what you're drawing, as the positive. So you can see the moons, and I think, what does that mean? I'm not sure. I don't know if it's a source, like, is it a light source, a life source? Is it energy? I don't know. But the circle is certainly a shape that I relate to. So, so that you see that a lot.
This is so wonderful. It's fascinating to hear you talk about it and hear what kind of it, it's not effortless, but it just seems to come out, and, and it's coming from just you. And so that's just always so interesting. Sarah, do you have any other questions or anything?
I just wanted to see if there were anybody else wanted to ask in the chat. I think we asked all ours.
I just wanted to say thank you very much for sharing. Your artwork is beautiful.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
You're a true colorist, I have to say. If there is such a word, if there is such a word, it's beautiful. And thank you for sharing.
Oh, this has been an honor, really a true honor for me to be showing my work at the Gadsden Arts Center and being part of this celebration of women. I think, that alone makes the statement. And so it's just been, the work looks beautiful on the walls up there. And I love, sharing my work. I can tell you an interesting thing is that as soon as I finish a piece, I have to immediately put a new piece of mat board on my table. That there's so I don't usually have a big gap in between creating work. So there's just something about that. It's like, okay, that one's done. Gonna go get it photographed, get it framed, but there's now I'm ready for the new one. So I don't know if those of you who are artists, if that makes sense, but you know, I guess there was so much that I had, like the genie just came out of the bottle, you know, and there's still, you know, the muse is still there, which I'm thankful for.
Absolutely. That's amazing. And just how much you've created in the past just few years, you know, you've
Yeah.
only been doing it for, like you said, the last 6 years. So it's very,
Right.
very impressive. So, well, we are just honored to have you here, Renee, and all of our
Thank you.
attendees. Thank you all for coming. And we do have Renee's work will be on display for another couple weeks. We do have coming up in January a new slate of exhibitions. The main exhibition is going to be work by Lester Richardson. He's a Tallahassee-based artist, but it's multiple series of his works created over the past probably more than 3 decades, but we're excited to have him. And then in January, we've got our Week with the Arts, which is a gala plus all kinds of great presentations about creativity and in our community, and an art auction, which we will have available online. So you don't have to necessarily be here. But we, like I said, we are open and we hope if you can come and visit us. And thank you all for joining us.